Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing with you tips and techniques for using stencils and stencil paste. What I really love about stencils is they are fairly inexpensive and they are great additions to your cards. And stencil paste is just so much fun because it can be sparkly or you can have a solid color like gold, and it just adds either an entire background to your card or just an additional element. Now there is quite a variety of stencil pastes on the market, but for today I am going to be featuring these 6 new stencil pastes from Fawn. It comes in white, gold, pearl, silver, fairy dust, and glow in the dark. These come in 2-ounce containers, and here's a look at the inside of it. Now, what I really love about this, it is not runny. It is very easy to smooth over your background, which I will show you in just a moment, but I wanted to show you that consistency. If stencil paste is too runny, then it tends to get underneath the stencil. So this is just a really great consistency. It kind of reminded me of almost like Crisco or just a soft butter, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So to start my projects, I'm going to be ink blending a few backgrounds. I am starting with a piece of white cardstock that is 80 pound. This is the white cardstock from Fawn, and I have it cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm starting off with Tattered Rose, and these are all the Stress Oxides. Then I moved on to Worn Lipstick, and I'm going to come in at the top with Seedless Preserves. Now you'll notice that I do go back and forth between my colors quite a bit, because if it is saturated, if your cardstock is saturated with ink, it is a lot easier to blend these colors together and help smooth out that transition. Now for the tool I'm using to blend my ink onto my background, I've actually been using the foam blending tools quite often. The reason for this is because it can apply a lot of ink at once, and I switched all of my tools over to the Dome foam blending tools. So I've really been enjoying using those. Typically for blending brushes, I just use those if I want kind of a soft transition of color, but this I wanted the entire background to be covered. This next background, I actually started off with lighter toned colors. I started off with Squeezed Lemonade, Dried Marigold, and then I went into Wilted Violet, and I realized that those previous 2 colors were just a little too muted. So I came back to the Carved Pumpkin, and then I went back and did Mustard Seed, and I liked that a lot better since this is going to be a Halloween card. Then I went back to the top and I'm adding Black Soot, and I'll go back through the transition of those colors to kind of help smooth that over. You may also notice that I have my ink pads in a stand from the ink stand. I will have it linked down below. I really like using these because, for one, it has grippers on the bottom, so it's not sliding all over my glass surface, and my hand is free to do whatever I need it to do. So if I need to put a Post-it note over my fingers to hold my cardstock, I have that hand free to move around and do what I need to. So I do find those ink stands very helpful. Then I can start working on stenciling my background. So this is one of the new stencils from Fawn. This is the Snowflake background stencil. I love snowflake backgrounds. So this is a 2-part stencil. So for this first one, I am going to place the stencil over the top of my background, and I'm holding it down with my magnets using my Make Art Station. Then I have some Yeti ink, and you can see I took some into my blending tool and tapped a bunch off on the side. Yeti ink is a pigment ink, which means that it is very thick and can stay wet for a long time if it is applied too heavily. So I like to dab off a lot, and then I can always pick that up when I need to add more ink to my tool. So I have that first layer done, and now I'm bringing in this second layer. And my background is so dark and the snowflakes are so light, it actually was really hard for me to line up this second layer. But honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with this. Even if they are overlapping the snowflakes in the background, that's just kind of natural for snowflakes. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do this. Now, one of the reasons that I am applying that Yeti ink first is I kind of want to have a base color underneath because my background is so dark. So by applying that Yeti ink, that white pigment ink, I'm kind of creating that base layer for the stencil paste that I'm going to be applying, which is fairy dust. And this honestly is probably going to be my most used stencil paste from Fawn because it just kind of has this clear look to it with a ton of sparkle. So I am just using a silicone tool here to pick up that stencil paste, apply it onto my background, and then smooth that down. So I am just applying this right over that last layer that I applied. Now, typically I would say if you have any extra, put it back in a container. But in this case with Distress Oxides, because they can react to water or a liquid form like this, you don't want to put this back in your jar because it could be tinted with that color. So now I just carefully peeled off that background and I'm going to set this off on the side to dry. I also like to kind of take my finger and just run it along the edge, and that helps smooth my edges down so I don't have any harsh stencil paste on the edges. You also do not want stencil paste to dry onto your surfaces or your stencil. So you definitely want to wipe down your tool right away and take your stencil over to the sink and just wash it with some warm water and soap. Definitely warm water helps. It just kind of helps move that stencil paste a little bit and come off a little bit easier. Next, I have my Halloween background, and this one I am using a previous stencil that was released a while back, and this is the Starry Sky stencil, and I am applying the gold stencil paste. You can see it actually almost has kind of a pearlescent shimmer to it, and this is really easy to apply. The fairy dust was a little bit thicker. This one, it's not runny, but it was a little bit smoother, kind of more like the melted butter type of feel. I don't know if it's just because of my house, where they were in my room, that can make a difference, but this was really easy to apply. So once again, I set that off on the side, and now I'm actually going to use this as kind of additional elements to a background. I'm starting off with the mountain stencil, and I'm lining those mountains up. So I'm going to ink blend on some mountains here quick, just by masking off the top portion of my stencil. And then I'm going to bring in pumice stone Distress Oxide with my foam blending tool and just lightly ink blend on some mountains. I don't need to go all the way to the bottom because I'm going to cover that up anyway in the end. So just adding a quick color onto the background. Next, I can remove those Post-it notes, and I'm going to slide my stencil down. So not only will this create mountains, but it's also going to mask those mountains off so that I can create a sky. This would be really great if you're a fan of one-layer cards. Once I have those lined up over my mountains, I'm going to hold that stencil down with my magnets and place those Post-it notes back over the top so I'm not getting any ink on those other areas of the stencil. And since I had these colors already on my desk, I'm just going to use them for my sky. So I have Tattered Rose and Worn Lipstick. So that'll be my kind of pinkish blended sky I thought would look really cute for a Christmas card. Here's where the fun comes in with the stencil paste. I moved my stencil up, and you can see on this mountain stencil, there are little snow caps that you can line up over your mountains. Now, once again, I am taking that Yeti ink and I'm going to add that to the top of the mountain to kind of help bring out the white a little bit. And then I'm going to bring in the white stencil paste. Now, this would be great with the fairy dust, or even maybe silver would look kind of cool, just depending on the look that you're going for. But I am just going to add a little bit of that white stencil paste over those snow-capped areas, and then just run my tool over that to help smooth that out. Now, my main focus of the video was just to show you different ways that you can use stencil paste. I will be showing you the completed cards here and explaining to you the different products that I used to finish off the cards. Here's a look at the card that I just was working on with those snow-capped mountains, and I'll give you a close-up look at that stencil paste on there. It just looks really cool, and I think would look even cooler with the fairy dust on there, but I wanted to try something different. And for this card, I am using the Jolly Christmas Tree, which is that piecing die, and I also have a new stamp set on here that is Penguin Party. Then I have my snowflake background that I used the fairy dust stencil paste on. And once I give a close-up look here, you can see it has just that subtle look of the white pigment ink, and then we have those sparkly snowflakes. To finish off this card, I die cut out the Magic Iris Snowflake add-on with holographic cardstock, and I layered that together 3 times to give that some dimension, and finished it off with a sentiment from the Magic Holiday Messages stamp set. For my last card, I kind of went all out because I'm a huge fan of Halloween. So this is where I used the Starry Sky stencil with the gold stencil paste. And to complete this card, I did some birch trees out of black licorice cardstock. I have a wagon of pumpkins in there from the Happy Harvest stamp set. And then I also have these puppies from the Furry and Bright stamp and die set, which is actually a holiday set, but I thought they looked super cute with that wagon. There are 3 ideas for you that you can use stencils and your stencil pastes with. I hope you found my tips and techniques helpful and these have inspired you in your card making. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.